Do you think it's appropriate for politicians to fund and regulate the journalists whose job it is to hold them accountable?
Of course not. And Canada's CBC News is no longer news. It's a communications arm for Justin Trudeau. How can media objectively cover the government when the government signs their paycheck? It's utterly impossible. You know, I was born in the Soviet Union. There was a newspaper called Pravda, and Pravda means truth. And I see no difference between what we're seeing in state-run funding. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to defund the CBC. I'm going to end all subsidies and bailouts, but I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to end the advertising relationship that government has with media. We've seen unprecedented media buys by government in the last couple of years. Many of them are self-serving. So there should be no more self-serving advertising on the taxpayer dollars. There's no democracy without independent media, and I'm committed to restoring Canada's democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Next, we'll go to you, Mr. Charest.
Well, Roman has put his finger on something that is going to be very important as we come out of COVID, and that's to do a very thorough audit of all the government spending on publicity, on how it was spent, where it was spent, who it went to, and what was the use. I think that Canadians need to know where their money went in regards to all that advertising, not just in the context of COVID, but also all government advertising. And that would be something that would be, I think, extremely important as we look ahead on how we deal with advertising and the media.
Thank you, Mr. Charest. Next to you, Mr. Poilievre.
I would defund the CBC. I would defund the CBC to save over $1 billion, and I would repeal the Internet Censorship Bill C-11. That bill, yes. That bill came forward as C-10 in the last Parliament. I was the first MP to sound the alarm bell over that bill, and I joined with other MPs like Rachel Thomas in order to stop it from passing before the election was called. Not only will I get rid of that, but if they do decide to go ahead with this digital safety commissioner, who will have the power to take down what you post online, remove websites that it considers hostile to the government, I will fire that digital safety commissioner, and I will uphold and restore freedom of expression in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Next to you, Mr. Aitchison.
Well, thank you. I'm actually inclined not to just burn down the CBC. I think that it used to serve a really useful purpose in this country in terms of our heritage and bringing us together. I think that it needs to be refocused. I think it needs to be reined in and obviously not be the arm of the Liberal government anymore. I agree with that. But I don't think burning it down is the answer. I also should point out that I was actually a member of the Heritage Committee when we were opposing Bill C-10 at the time, and we helped lead the charge to stop that bill from becoming law. And Pierre's right. He was, in fact, the first one to raise the alarm bell, and we did a really respectful, effective job at slowing them down, proposing reasonable amendments with experts. It frustrated the Liberals, and eventually, of course, Justin ran out of time on his other scandals, and we had an election. So we stopped them, and we did it in a really respectful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. And finally, over to you, Dr. Lewis.
Legacy media in general has become a propaganda arm of the Liberal government. We saw dishonest reporting during the trucker convoy. We were told that these truckers were committing acts of sedition and overturning our country. People were terrified. Instead, we saw that only charges of mischief were laid. I would defund the CBC and save Canadians $1 billion. I would repeal Bill C-11, and I would make sure that Canadians can have alternative news online. Most Canadians are getting their news online, and we should not have a two-tier media system which benefits and rewards legacy media.